ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayana, unto Naranarayana Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nashtaprayeshu abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. And loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, the Samam Bonam, Chapter 1, the Advent of Lord Krishna, text number 3. Avatirya Yado Vamse Avatirya Yador Vamse Bhagavan Bhuta Bhavanaha Bhagavan Bhuta Bhavanaha Kritavan Yani Viswatma Kritavan Yani Viswatma Tani Naha Bada Vistarat Tani no Bada Vistarat Avatirya Yador Vamse Bhagavan Bhuta Bhavanaha Kritavan Yani Viswatma Tani no Vada Vistarat Avatirya Yador Vamse Bhagavan Bhuta Bhavanaha Kritavan Yani Viswatma Tani no Vada Vistarat Avatirya Yador Vamse Bhagavan Bhuta Bhavanaha Kritavan Yani Viswatma Tani no Vada Vistarat
Avatirya Yador Vamse Bhagavan Bhuta Bhavanaha Kritavan Yani Vishwatma Tani no Vada Vistarat
Avatirya Yador Vamse Bhagavan Bhuta Bhavanaha Kritavan Yani Vishwatma
Yani Viswatma
Tani no Vada Vistarat
Yador Vamse Bhagavan Bhuta Bhavanaha Kritavan Yani Vishwatma Tani no Vada Vistarat
Avatirya Yador Vamse Bhagavan Bhuta Bhavanaha Kritavan Yani Viswatma Tani no Vada Vistarat
Avatirya Yador Vamse Bhagavan Bhuta Bhavanaha Kritvan Yani Vishwatma Tani no Vada Vistarat
अवतीर्यायदोर्वंशे
अवतीर्ययदोर्वंशे
अवतीर्ययदोर्वंशे
भगवान् भूतभावनः
भगवान् भूतभावना
कृत्वा यानि विश्वात्मं
कृतवान् यानि विश्वात्मा
तानि नो वद विस्तरम्
तानि नो वद विस्तरम्
अवतीर्ययदोर्वंशे भगवान् भूतभावनः कृतवान् यानि विश्वात्मा तानि नो वद विस्तरात्
अवतीर्ययदोर्वंशे भगवान् भूतभावनः कृतवान् यानि विश्वात्मा तानि नो वद विस्तरात्.
Online. Anybody online? Avatirya Yadorvamse Avatirya Yadorvamse Bhagavan Bhuta Bhavanaha Tavanyani Visvatma Tani no Vada Vistarat. Synonyms: Avatirya, after descending. Yado Bhamse, in the dynasty of Yadu. Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Bhuta Bhavanaha, who is the cause of the cosmic manifestation. Kritavan, executed. Yani, whatever activities. Vishwa Atma, the super soul of the entire universe. Tani, all of those activities. Naha, unto us. Bada, kindly say. Vistarat, elaborately. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Translation: the Super Soul, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Shri Krishna, the cause of the cosmic manifestation, appeared in the dynasty of Yadu. Please tell me elaborately about his glorious activities and character from the beginning to the end of his life. Translation with repetition. The Super Soul, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna, the cause of the cosmic manifestation, appeared in the dynasty of Yadu. Please tell me elaborately about his glorious activities and character from the beginning to the end of his life. Purport by Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Srila Prabhupada.
In this verse, the words Kritavan Yani indicate that all the different activities Krishna performed while present on earth are beneficial to human society. If religionists, philosophers, and people in general simply hear the activities of Krishna, they will be liberated. We have described several times that there are two kinds of Krishna Katha, represented by Bhagavad Gita, spoken personally by Krishna about himself, and Srimad Bhagavatam, spoken by Sukadev Goswami about the glories of Krishna. Anyone who becomes even slightly interested in Krishna Katha is liberated. Kirtanadeva Krishnasya Mukta Sangha Param Brajet. Simply by chanting or repeating Krishna Katha, one is liberated from the contamination of Kali Yuga. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore advised, Yare dekho tare kaho Krishna upadesh. This is the mission of Krishna consciousness, to hear about Krishna and thus be liberated from material bondage. Thus ends the wonderful transcendental Bhaktivedanta purport. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Nitnamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So this is in continuation with our lecture that we had yesterday about the wonderful transcendental appearance of the Lord in this material world. And this verse is spoken by Parikshit Maharaj. And the verse says, Avatirya yadorvamse bhagavan bhuta bhavanaha kritavan yani viswatma tani no vada vistarat. Very interesting verse. And this verse marks the silence of Parikshit for a long time when Sukadev Goswami is elaborately explaining about the dynasty, the sun dynasty, and then he goes on to talk about moon dynasty where Krishna appears. And yesterday we were seeing the verse from Bhagavad Gita which says Paritranaya sadhunam vinasaya cha duskritam dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. The three reasons which Krishna mentions there. The reason for his appearance, first is to deliver the sadhus, the pious people, then to annihilate the miscreants, and third is to establish or re-establish the principles of religion. Paritranaya sadhunam vinasaya cha duskritam dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. So Sukadev Goswami, while explaining different incarnations of the Lord, and then in course of his discourse he mentioned about the different dynasties, especially the kings who came in Sun dynasty, and then he went on to talk about Moon dynasty, some kings, and finished the entire thing of Krishna Lila in 2 verses. I'll show that verse today. And then all of a sudden, this verse comes in the beginning of 10th canto, spoken by Parikshit. He's saying the super soul, the supreme personality of Godhead, Viswatma, Sri Krishna, the cause of the cosmic manifestation. He is actually Bhuta Bhavanaha. He is the cause of the cosmic manifestation. Appeared in the dynasty of Yadu, Yador Vamse, Avatirya Yador Vamse. Please tell me elaborately, Vistarat. Please tell me elaborately about his glorious activities and character. Kritavan Yani, who did some wonderful activities. This Lord Viswatma, Tani no vada Vistarat. Please tell me elaborately about all this Kritavan Yani, the activities that was performed by the Lord, from the beginning to the end of his life. Now, yesterday I was quoting one verse, Sa Shraddha Dhanasya Bibruddhamana Virakti Manyatra Karoti Pumsaha Hare Padanu Smriti Nivritasya Samasta Dukkha Pyayamasu Dhatte Sa Shraddha Dhanasya Bibruddhamana, where the word-to-word translation of this word Shraddha Dhanasya by Prabhupada is one who's anxious to hear. Now this is a very important thing to remember, and this is exactly what Parikshit Maharaj is exhibiting in his life also. Anxious to hear, anxiety to hear. In one of the places where Prabhupada is giving a definition of Diksha, he says only when a disciple is anxious to perform devotional service, is anxious to hear about Krishna, that he is qualified to become a disciple. Unless, it is just for the namesake. Somebody becomes a disciple and then thinks that, okay, I have, been fortunate to be accepted by Srila Prabhupada, a pure devotee, but there is no real eagerness, there is no anxiety. The word anxiety is explained, like I was telling yesterday. A newlywed, when she goes to the husband's house, she's so anxious to please the in-laws. She's so anxious to please the husband. She doesn't mind calling her mother to find out how to get the right recipe so that she cooks the right thing and pleases this thing. That should be the mood that I have accepted a spiritual master who's a pure devotee. The reason it is not some material this thing that I have accepted a spiritual master, my job is over. And then I do anything that I like. I'll come, whatever I feel like I'll do. Do some devotional service which is appealing to me. Things which I don't like, I'll not do. I'll give it up. All kinds of whimsical things. No. I should be anxious to hear about Krishna Katha. I should be anxious to engage in devotional service. And as we saw yesterday also, that one should be doing devotional service with attachment, with love for the Lord, and with devotion. If those three things are missing, it becomes another activity that we do in material world. Like we do opulently some activities in this material world, Krishna's service also can become like that if those three things are missing. So it's very important, all these important instructions which our scriptures are telling. And here in this verse, this question is asked by Parikshit, Avatirya Yador Vamse Bhagavan Bhuta Bhavanaha Kritavan Yani Viswatma Tani No Vada Vistarat. Mind you, Parikshit is fasting. This is almost 5 days, over 5 days, 5 nights, constantly Krishna Katha is going on. He knows it's a matter of time when the death is going to come and embrace him. I don't know if you saw recently, there was a devotee who was sharing his experience of going and meeting his meeting his father, who was on his deathbed in a recent Bhagavatam class. Madhupandit Prabhu he called that devotee to come and share his experience. How many of you saw that? Yeah, see that? It's a very wonderful thing. Actually, he's a cook. His name is Samartha Govinda. And Prabhu calls him specifically to come and speak his realizations. Very important. So he said, I just want to repeat that because some of you have not heard. So his brother had purchased a flat in Bihar. He is from Jharkhand. And he had called this devotee to come for Griha Pravesh. And this has been going on for a long time. 3 months they've been discussing. So he booked his ticket 1 month prior. He has booked his ticket, and so he went by a train to see his the new house that has been purchased by his brother. So when he reaches there, he also, while in the train, he got a call from his brother saying that his father is not well. He's sick and he's bedridden. He's there in the bed. So this devotee, he said, okay, you put Hare Krishna chanting of Srila Prabhupada loudly. And they did that. The Hare Krishna chanting was going on. He reached there that day morning, and then they went and saw the house. His father was not able to breathe properly, but he was able to talk. He had a bath and he spoke to him. They went and saw the house. They came back. They had some food. And because this person, he is going after 3 years, this devotee, so to see him, there were many relatives who had come from Bihar in the local, his village. So there were so many people in his house. They all were seated. All of a sudden, this devotee thought, let me go and sit next to my father. So he goes and sits next to his father, and he saw that his father was having some foam from his mouth. So he wiped that foam. And then all of a sudden he realized that his father wanted to say something. He wanted to speak something, but he's unable to speak. And everybody around could realize that probably this is not something ordinary. This is something very serious which is going on. So at that point in time, he immediately removed his kantimala and put it around the neck of his father, asked someone to bring some tilak and put it on the head of his father, and chanted loudly Hare Krishna Mahamantra 15 or 16 times. And his father left the body. But he was telling it is so glorious. He had no idea. 1 month before he has booked his ticket, he is going there, and he reached, everything happened in few hours. It just got over. But his faith and his conviction in taking up to this process increased many times. Not just his faith, it should be, it should be for all of us. Any one person who becomes a devotee of the Lord, pure devotee, 7 generations up and down become completely liberated. It's a fact. We see it in our lives. That devotee, he was telling his father never chants Hare Krishna mantra. He had no idea. He has been suffering from a kidney related thing from a long time. But for last so many days that he was talking to him, he could take up to this process of chanting. And then finally this thing happened where he could go and chant. Then, this is such a glorious death. He put Charan Tulsi in his mouth and he left in that way. Here another person who's awaiting his death. Imagine what kind of situation, what kind of mental things will be going on. How much of desperation, okay, ठीक है यार, जो बोला बोल दिया, अभी 5-6 दिन बोल दिया, मैं खाया नहीं हूँ, पिया नहीं हूँ, खत्म करो इसको. नहीं. अवतीर्य यदोर्वम से भगवान भूत भावना कृतवान यानि विश्वात्मा. Tell me elaborately, Bistarat. I don't want any shortcuts in this. I want to know everything because this is real auspicious thing. Unfortunately, even after taking to this process of Krishna consciousness, people don't understand the value of Krishna Gatha. They think I'm doing some service, I'm doing a big favor on someone. I'm coming to the temple and doing some service, that is a big deal I'm doing. What is the point? That service also we will lose it if we don't hear Krishna Gatha properly. That attachment, that the eagerness that we have to engage in devotional service will be lost. Because we don't know who Krishna is. We have not developed a taste and attachment. This is what Parikshit Maharaj is demonstrating in his final days. Here are the 2 verses which comes in towards the end of 9th canto. Not towards the end, the last chapter of 9th canto, 24th chapter, the last 2 verses, where Parikshit Maharaj, instead of having that Sanskrit verse, the translation says, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Shri Krishna, known as Leela Purushottama, appeared as the son of Vasudev, but immediately left his father's home and went to Vrindavan to expand his loving relationship with his confidential devotees. In Vrindavan, the Lord killed many demons, and afterwards he returned to Dwaraka, where according to Vedic principles, he married many wives who were the best of women, begot through them hundreds of sons, and performed sacrifices for his own worship to establish the principles of householder life. And the next verse he says, thereafter Lord Shri Krishna created a misunderstanding between family members just to diminish the burden of the world. Simply by his glance, he annihilated all the demoniac kings on the battlefield of Kurukshetra and declared victory for Arjuna. Finally, he instructed Uddhava about the transcendental life and devotion and then returned to his abode in his original form. We had during the drama for Ramayana, we had one verse which completely summarizes Ramayana, the important episodes. There was one Jatayu Maranam which we had. Similarly, these 2 verses summarizes the entire Krishna Leela. You want to know about this? So he appeared as the son of Vasudev, left his father's home, went to Vrindavan, expanded his loving relationship with his confidential devotees. He killed many demons, he returned to Dwaraka, and then married many wives, begot hundreds of sons from them, performed sacrifices for his own worship to re-establish. Lord does this so that people do this. Unfortunately, dull-headed people, you tell them, all of us, we don't get this simple in life. Lord has to demonstrate it. Lord has to come as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to again show it. Oh, foolish people, don't get caught up in this material world for some petty attachments and allurements. It's not worth it. He demonstrates, performs sacrifices for his own worship to establish the principles of householder life. Thereafter, Lord Shri Krishna created a misunderstanding between the family members, and then simply by his glance, he annihilated the demoniac kings on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. This is where Bhagavad Gita was spoken. And then he instructed Uddhava about the transcendental life and devotion one more time, and then returned to his abode in his original form. Interestingly, since yesterday we've been trying to find out the reasons for Lord's appearance. And I told Paritranaya Sadhunam Vinasaya Cha Duskritam Dharma Samsthapanarthaya Sambhavami Yuge Yuge, right? These 3 reasons. But in the 9th canto, 24th chapter, 66th verse, in the purport, Prabhupada says the real purpose of Krishna's appearance. So you know about 3 reasons, add one more. The real purpose of Krishna's appearance, however, was to manifest how one can take part in loving affairs with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's a very important reason Prabhupada writes in the purport. The real purpose of Krishna's appearance, however, was to manifest how one can take part in loving affairs with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now one may wonder, the Lord performed so many activities. He was born in Mathura, he went to Vrindavan, he went to Dwaraka, he went to Hastinapur, he was there with the Pandavas. Where is it that the loving affairs of the Lord are mentioned? The real purpose of Krishna's appearance, however, was to manifest how one can take part in loving affairs with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Prabhupada in the next line says, reciprocation of loving affairs in ecstasy are possible only in Vrindavan. Not in Dwaraka, not in Mathura, not in Hastinapur, not anywhere else. Reciprocations of loving affairs in ecstasy are possible only in Vrindavan. So the Lord comes and does this wonderful pastimes. What pastimes these are? That's why Bhagavatam, our scriptures say there are two kinds of Vrindavan. One is the Bhauma Vrindavan, which is in Bhumi, in planet Earth, and there is Vyoma Vrindavan, which is there in original in Goloka Vrindavan. When the Lord comes, he does certain pastimes in Bhauma Vrindavan, which is not even present in the Vyoma Vrindavan, because here there are demons who are attacking. Here there are so many things which are happening. There are no demons in Vrindavan, but these are all happening, and those pastimes, leelas, are meant to heighten the ecstasy of the devotees. When they are depending on the Lord, they are facing these difficulties, when lifting Govardhan, all these things, it heightens the ecstasy of the devotees who are always in loving this thing with the Lord. So Prabhupada mentions elsewhere in different places that somebody, when he has become completely pure in his heart, in his consciousness, gets a chance to enter into the pastimes of Lord in this Bhauma Vrindavan, and then after that he goes back to the real Vrindavan. Very important thing to remember this, because sometimes when people say that Krishna took birth, Krishna is not taking birth. Krishna appears. Like the sun appeared in the eastern horizon. So it's not like sun has taken birth. So now sun sets at certain point in time, again appears in another place. Similarly, in this material universe, the Lord appears at different planets. He goes out of this material planet. In this universe, he winds up his pastimes, again appears in somewhere else. But like Nitya Leela in Vrindavan is going on, similarly Nitya Leela in this material universe is going on. A living entity, when he purifies himself, achieves the perfection that, now my consciousness is completely pure, gets a chance to be with the Lord in this Bhauma Vrindavan and exhibit this wonderful loving pastimes, be part of this loving affairs with the Supreme Lord, and then goes back to Vrindavan. Such a glorious chance, such a wonderful thing. In another place, actually, it is mentioned about this pastimes and why the Lord appears in a beautiful verse in the 10th canto. Anugrahaya bhaktanam manusam dehamastitaha bhajate tadrishih krida yah srutva tatparo bhavet. It's a wonderful verse. Actually, there is no other reason for the Lord to manifest here. There is no reason. There is absolutely no obligation for the Lord to come down here. He comes only for anugrahaya bhaktanam, for the mercy. He wants to bestow his mercy for the people who will take up to this devotion. Anugrahaya bhaktanam manusam deham asthita. He does this pastimes in human-like body. Naralila. Prabhupada says somewhere in Naralila. I mean, when the Lord appears in the in the yonis of animals, he becomes a perfect animal. He comes as Matsya, he is a perfect fish. He comes as a Kurma, a tortoise, he is a perfect tortoise. He comes as a human, he is a perfect human. 2 hands, 2 legs, 2 eyes, 1 nose, perfectly human-like. And with that human-like body, when he is performing these pastimes, it becomes very attractive. Manusam deham asthita bhajate tadrishi kridha ya shrutva tato paro bhavet. When the Lord assumes a human-like body to show mercy to his devotees, he engages in such pastimes as will attract those who hear about them to become dedicated to him. Why this becomes so attractive? This becomes attractive because even ordinary child cries. He falls down. He does all those things. He has some tantrums with his mother. What is the difference? So that's why ordinary people, they say, मेरे घर में भी कृष्णा है, राधा है. They बुलाते हैं Krishna. Krishna dress में कहता है one ordinary person whose nose is running, and who's not able to hear properly, he says, I am also Krishna, he thinks. The difference is, the big difference is, this is the Supreme Lord who has got 6 opulences. By his fear, the sun is rising. By his fear, the wind is blowing. That Lord is performing human-like pastimes. So there are 2 sides of a coin. One is called a rasa, the other one is called tattva. One has to understand the tattva, which is built up in the first 9 cantos about the Supreme Lord, who he is, what is his position, who's filled with 6 opulences. Same Lord takes a position of an ordinary person and doesn't want to be in that Lord Bhava, where he's not expecting that people should come and respect me in awe and veneration. No, he wants to be chastised. He wants to have that loving reciprocation with the devotees. That is the Rasa Tattva. So when that Lord, who's supremely powerful, does accept some human-like body and does these wonderful things, attracts our mind. Manusam dehamastita bhajate tadrishi krida yashrutva tatparo bhavet. And by hearing that, we become purified. We become completely cleansed. When the Lord assumes a human-like body to show mercy to his devotees, he engages in such pastimes as will attract those who hear about them to become dedicated to him. Very interestingly, the next verse that comes in Bhagavatam after this is a very famous verse, which also comes in the where does it come, the next verse? 10.1.3 is what we are discussing. Anybody knows where 10.1.4 comes? No. Balram bro. In Krishna book introduction, the verse that comes is Nivrittatarshair upagiyamanad bhavau sodhat chotra manobhiramad kauttama shloka gunanuvadat puman virajyeta vinapasugnat. This verse, and this is one of the verses which is quoted by Prabhupada many times. Nivrittatarshair upagiyamanad bhavau sodhat chotra manobhiramad ka uttama shloka gunanuvadat puman virajyeta vinapasugnat. Actually, in this verse, Prabhupada clarifies there are 3 kinds of people, and how Krishna Katha acts in these 3 kinds of people, and who are these 3 kinds of people and how it acts on them. So the translation of this verse is, glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is performed in parampara system. That is, it is conveyed from the spiritual master to disciple. Such glorification is relished by those no longer interested in the false temporary glorification of this cosmic manifestation. Description of the Lord are the right medicine for the conditioned soul undergoing repeated birth and death. Therefore, who will cease hearing such glorification of the Lord except a butcher or one who is killing his own self? Nivritta tarshair upagiyamanat. Bhavo sodhat. Jo people who are actually want to have this, who still have those desire to enjoy this material world, for them it acts like a medicine. Descriptions of the Lord are the right medicine for the conditioned soul undergoing repeated and birth and death. Then there are some who are nivritta tarshair, who are completely free from this. Tarshair is Trishna, is coming from the same root word, free from all the hankerings for the material activities. For them, upagiya manat, actually it's a instead of a ausadha, it acts as a rasayana. It's the great glory. I mean, it's a very sweet, relisable things. Glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is performed in the parampara system, that is, it is conveyed from the spiritual master to disciple. Such glorification is relished by those no longer interested in the false temporary glorification of this cosmic manifestation. Descriptions of the Lord are the right medicine for the conditioned soul undergoing repeated birth and death. Therefore, who will cease hearing such glorification of the Lord except a butcher or one who is killing his own self? Now, one of the things that we can see is how important the verse is by seeing how long the purport is. That's one of the things that if you see how big is the purport. So there are certain verses like the Chaturshloki Bhagavatam. Prabhupada gives elaborate purports because he's trying to explain. These are all very important verses. Pay attention. So here, let's see the purport of this verse, how big is the purport and what Prabhupada is trying to say in this. It's a very wonderful purport. I know it is a long purport, but it's worth paying attention. Otherwise, Prabhupada would have not written so many things in this. In India, it is the practice among the general populace to hear about Krishna, either from Bhagavad Gita or from Srimad Bhagavatam, in order to gain relief from the disease of repeated birth and death. In general, India, it is the practice that people hear about Krishna. And what is how to hear about Krishna? Either from Bhagavad Gita or from Srimad Bhagavatam. For what? In order to gain relief from the disease of repeated birth and death. What happens is the covering of this external energy is so strong that it makes us forget that we have this disease called Bhavaroga. Bhava means to become. Become what? Become diseased, become old, and become dead. So Bhavaroga, when we are suffering, we don't realize because of the covering of the external energy, and we become forgetful of our situation, and we look for relief in a distressed condition where it is very difficult to understand what is the real thing, how can I get relief. It will not go. But if somebody understands this instructions, this Krishna Katha which Krishna himself has shared in Bhagavad Gita or in Bhagavatam, it will give him relief from the disease of repeated birth and death. Although India is now fallen, when there is a message that someone will speak about Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam, thousands of people still gather to hear. Even though India is, Prabhupada is saying, fallen, still when there is a message which is sent, people will gather. This verse indicates, however, that such recitation of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam must be done by persons completely freed from material desires. Nivritta Tarshay. Actually, important is that we should hear Krishna Katha. But here in this purport, this is the purport. It's a huge purport. Okay, and in this purport, if you see what are the important things Prabhupada is trying to say, if you try to summarize that, the first thing that Prabhupada is saying is that one has to hear from the right source. The person who is speaking should be Nivritta Tarshay. If that is the qualification required, then probably none of us will be qualified. But then Prabhupada goes on in the purport and explains that a person, he may be fool, he may have desires, but if he is not doing any mental concoction and just repeating the words of the Acharya, it is worth hearing from them. There is another class of speakers who are also doing Krishna Katha, who are the professional reciters. But if somebody hears from the professional reciters, then it will have no impact. So, this verse, however, indicates that such recitation of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam must be done by persons completely freed from the material desires, Nivritta Tarshay. Everyone within this material world, beginning from Brahma down to the insignificant ant, is full of material desires for sense enjoyment, and everyone is busy in sense gratification. But when thus engaged, one cannot fully understand the value of Krishna Katha, either in the form of Bhagavad Gita or in the Srimad Bhagavatam. If we hear the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead from liberated persons, this hearing will certainly free us from the bondage of material activities. But hearing Srimad Bhagavatam spoken by a professional reciter cannot actually help us achieve liberation. And then Prabhupada goes on to speak about this verse called Avaishnava Mukhodgirinam Putam Harikathamratam Shravanam Naiva Kartavyam Sarpochishtam Yathapayaha. I'm just trying to give you a summary instead of reading that, because otherwise half of you are already asleep, and this is what is the situation in our life. So there is another thing which Prabhupada says, two classes of men, however, will never be interested in hearing this message of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Do you know who are the two classes of men who will not be interested? Okay, why? I am saying from the purport actually. There are two classes of men who will never be interested, say never, in hearing the message of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. उनको होता ही नहीं है, उनका लाइफ में आएगा ही नहीं ये चांस. Close, yes, good. So those who are determined to commit suicide. Anybody who's here to commit suicide? Prabhupada explains what does that mean. Those who are determined to commit suicide and those determined to kill cows and other animals for the satisfaction of their own tongues. If somebody is eating animals, that's very gross, we can see that. They can never get attraction for Krishna Katha. But the first one, those who are determined to commit suicide, and Prabhupada explains what does that mean. Although such persons may take a show of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam at a Bhagavat Saptaha, this is but another creation of the karmis who cannot derive any benefit from such performance. The word Pasugnath is important in this connection. Pasugna means butcher. Persons fond of performing ritualistic ceremonies for elevation to the higher planetary systems must offer sacrifices, yajnas, by killing animals. Prabhupada explains, only those people who are determined to commit suicide, see the word used, determined to commit suicide. That means they don't really care for their own good. They will not be interested in hearing the message of Bhagavad Gita. Why? Just so restless, can't sit. In the name of services, they will disappear, saying that this is not important for me. They'll not show up. They'll have no interest because they really don't understand what is good for them. And further down in this purport, Prabhupada says, because they have got a lot of materialistic desires. The materialistic desires is called a Vishaya. There is a difference. Our acharyas talk about this word Vishaya and Visha. Visha is something which makes, if somebody takes Visha, then the soul has to quit the body. But Vishaya, if someone is attached to Vishaya, then the soul is disinterested or disengaged from super soul. It is because it is. So souls quitting the body is not a very big calamity. Of course, a person is going to die. But somebody who's engaging Vishaya, materialistic things, he's denied of coming to take shelter of Krishna, which is the verse in Bhagavad Gita. Bhogaishwarya prasaktanam taya aparhata chetasam vyavasayatmika buddhi samadho na vidhiyate. If a person is too attached to bhoga and aishwarya, bhoga is not really gross sense gratification, even subtle sense gratification and opulences. Bhogaishwarya prasaktanam means if somebody is attached to that, it is the options for him are many branched. Which direction to go? This way also he can go, this way he can go this way. Taya aparhata chetasam. When he is busy doing that, his aparhata chetasam, his intelligence gets stolen by Maya. Taya aparhata chetasam vyavasayatmika buddhi samadhona vidhiyate. One-pointed determination to serve the Lord will never come. Will not happen. So it's very important. So this Prabhupada is saying there are two classes of people who will never be interested in hearing the message. Those who are determined to commit suicide. Suicide is not through poison but through Vishaya. And those who are determined to kill cows and other animals. The verse that we just spoke, 10.1.3, in the last line, actually, if you don't remember anything about the verse, it clearly talks about the eagerness to hear about Krishna Katha. Kritavan yani viswatma tani no vada vistarat. He's telling Parikshit's plea is to elaborately describe Krishna Katha. But if you don't remember any of this verse, you go back and you sleep and you get busy in your life. Then again Janmashtami comes and goes. And again we continue with our life. Remember this one line of the purport. The last sentence of this purport. This is the mission of Krishna consciousness. To hear about Krishna and thus be liberated from material bondage. An acharya on his deathbed, towards the final stage of his life, writing this, telling how important it is for us. Some people think ये लोगों का कुछ काम नहीं है क्या? जब भी देखो hearing बोलते हैं. No, it is not our this thing. You develop this. This is the main quality. This is the mission of Krishna consciousness. What is the mission? To hear about Krishna and thus be liberated from material bondage. Parikshit Maharaj goes on to ask few more questions after this fourth verse. He says, taking the boat of Krishna's lotus feet, my grandfather Arjuna and others crossed the ocean of battlefield of Kurukshetra, in which such commanders as Bhismadev resembled great fish that could very easily have swallowed them. What is the fish which swallows? Timingala. So the great fish which could have, so Timingalas, they can swallow even whales. What to speak of a small fish like my grandfather Arjuna? It was very small. But taking the boat of Krishna's lotus feet, my grandfather Arjuna and others crossed the ocean of battlefield of Kurukshetra, in which such commanders as Bhismadev resembled great fish that could very easily have swallowed them. By the mercy of Lord Krishna, my grandfathers crossed this ocean, which was very difficult to cross, as easily as one steps over the hoof print of calf. Because my mother surrendered unto Lord Krishna's lotus feet, the Lord, Sudarshan Chakra in hand, entered her womb and saved my body. Actually, the reason why Parikshit had that name, Parikshit, because he was always examining to find out where is that Supreme Lord whom I saw in the womb of my mother. Where is that personality? The body of the last remaining descendant of the Kurus and the Pandavas, which was almost destroyed by the fiery weapon of Aswathama. Lord Shri Krishna, appearing within and outside all materially embodied living beings by his own potency in the forms of eternal time, that is Paramatma, and as Virata Roop, gave liberation to everyone, either as cruel death or as life. Kindly enlighten me by describing his transcendental characteristics. This is 10.1.5. We know this verse also comes in the chapter that we are reading in morning, the conversation between Narada Muni and Vedavyas. Etadhi atura chittanam matra sparshe chaya muhu bhavasindhu plavo drashto haricharyanu varnanam. The boat of Krishna's lotus feet. It's a very powerful boat. The ocean that we are put in, the material, the ocean of birth and death, insurmountable. There are waves, there are sharks, there are Timingalas, there are a lot of challenges and problems. But if etadhi atura, and we are always atura, we are always anxious, we are always having desire, we are always having some problems or other which is tormenting us. We don't show it every time to the world. We want to maintain that calm composure artificially. But inside there is there. It is, if this is not there, something else is going on. And etadhi atura chittanam, because matra sparshe chaya muhu. Because constantly muhu, always we are looking for, the senses are looking for enjoying the sense objects. Matra and sparsha, when they are constantly desiring, in different ways different people are wanting that. Then there is etadhi atura chittana. Bhavasindhu plavadrashto. However, there is this strong boat of Krishna consciousness. Haricharya anuvarnanam. When somebody is using that boat of Haricharya anuvarnanam, then he can cross over this. Similar thing he is telling, that how even though there were Timingalas like Bhisma and other generals on the other side, my father just took up this boat of Krishna's lotus feet, and he could cross this ocean of Kurukshetra battlefield. Then he goes to ask, my dear Sukadev Goswami, you have already explained that Sankarshana, who belongs to the second quadruple, appeared as the son of Rohini named Balaram. If Balaram was not transferred from one body to another, how is it possible that he was first in the womb of Devaki and then in the womb of Rohini? Kindly explain this to me. So the questions that I'm just trying to highlight the questions that Parikshit is asking before Sukadev Goswami begins to speak, and how wonderfully he speaks. But here are the other questions. So first he wanted to know about the activities of the Lord Vistarat, elaborately. Then he's asking, if Balaram was not transferred from one body to another, how is it possible that he was first in the womb of Devaki and then in the womb of Rohini? Kindly explain this, about the birth of Balaram. And then why did Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, leave the house of his father, Vasudev, and transfer himself to the house of Nanda in Vrindavan? Where did the Lord, the master of the Yadu dynasty, live with his relatives in Vrindavan? This is another question. And then he says, Lord Krishna lived both in Vrindavan and in Mathura. What did he do there? Why did he kill Kamsa, his mother's brother? Such killing is not at all sanctioned in the Shastras. All these questions can come in people's mind. Why did he kill his own uncle? Why did he leave this? Why did he leave his own father and mother? Why did he go? These are the questions which Parikshit Maharaj is asking. And then he's saying, O great sages, who know everything about Krishna, please describe in detail all the activities of which I have inquired, and also those of which I have not. For I have full faith, and I am very eager to hear of them. So he's telling, I have asked certain questions which is coming to my mind, but I also want to know things which I have not asked, because I have full faith and I'm very eager to hear of them. This verse is a very interesting verse, because it is telling this one word, Etad anyaccha sarvam me mune krishna vicheshtitam vaktum arhasi sarvagya shraddhadhanaya vistartam. Shraddhadhanaya. I have got full faith. I'm not envious and I have got full faith in the Lord. I want to hear. This is a thing that I was mentioning yesterday also. From Shraddha comes Bhakti. Shraddha is the Janani of Bhakti. If there is no Shraddha, there is no Shraddha in devotees, there is no Shraddha in the spiritual master, there is no Shraddha in the system, there is no Shraddha in the Lord. Where is the question of Bhakti? No Bhakti will come. You tell anything, nothing will go. So some people just come for the sake of coming. They have know this thing. Somehow they are forced. Like one in the farmers, in the in the agriculture, they say about one ox which doesn't move. To make that ox move, you have to twist his tail fully. Then he gets little pain, he goes a little bit. Then he goes a little bit, then you again twist. He stops there. Then he goes a little bit. Some people also are like that. Somehow they have come, they don't really want to know what is it. They're ready to commit spiritual suicide, no interest for reading, hearing, and then they do something and then they create a lot of disturbances for themselves as well as for the whole system. But if we really understand what is the essence, why did I take up to this process of devotion, what it can give me, and where, what kind of miseries I am stuck in, I can come out of that just by following this process. It all requires that Shraddhadhanaya. Shraddhadhanaya is the best, the most important criteria. And then he says the next verse before Sukadev Goswami begins to speak, Pivantam tvan mukham bhojam chutam harikathamritam. Because of my vow on the verge of death, I have given up even drinking water. Yet because I am drinking the nectar of topics about Krishna, which is flowing from the lotus mouth of your Lordship, my hunger and thirst, which are extremely difficult to bear, cannot hinder me. Same Parikshit Maharaj who could not bear the thirst. Once he was thirsty and insulted the sage, and the consequence was he got this curse. Same Parikshit Maharaj now sitting here, fasting till death, no drinking, no eating, nothing. But he's saying, don't worry, oh Sukadev Goswami, if you are having concerns that I'm not drinking, remember that I'm drinking this nectar of the topics about Krishna, which is flowing from your lotus mouth. I'm not worried. I'm this my hunger and thirst, the bodily hunger and thirst are gone, which is extremely difficult to bear, but it is not going to hinder me. He was telling, even if you may have this doubt that I'm a king, I'm a royal king, used to having this royal comforts, but don't worry. I have already given up all those things. Continue talking about Krishna. Pivantam tvan mukham bhojam chutam harikathamratam. Once one gets that taste for harikathamratam, nothing else is going to matter. Then Sukadev Goswami will begin to speak. And whatever he speaks are just nectar. There's one verse we will say and then we will close. Vasudeva katha prashnaha purusham strin punatihi bhaktaram prichakam shrotrims tat pada salilam yatha. So before he begins to speak about Krishna's glories, Sukadev Goswami clarifies that there are three kinds of people who will get benefited by this Krishna katha. Vasudeva katha prashnaha pumsam trin punatihi. Three kinds of people will get punati, will become purified. Bhaktaram, who is speaking. Prichakam, who is asking questions. Shrotrims, who is hearing. Bhaktaram, Prichakam, Shrotrims, Tat Pada Salilam Yatha. Like Ganges, which is coming from the lotus feet of the Lord, purifies the three planetary systems. Similarly, these three classes of people also get purified. The Ganges emanating from the toe of Lord Vishnu purifies the three worlds, the upper, middle and lower planetary systems. Similarly, when one asks questions about the pastimes and characteristics of Lord Vasudeva, Krishna, three varieties of men are purified. The speaker or preacher, he who inquires, and the people in general who listen. So these are all wonderful instructions and revelations of our scriptures. But unfortunately, due to agitation of our own mind, which is the biggest enemy, and the modes which are acting on us, we get distracted. We miss out the real purpose of celebrating. We miss out the real purpose of what is this Krishna Katha. Like before Sukadev Goswami begins to speak in second canto, he says, Shrottavyadini Rajendra Nranam Santi Sahasrashaha Apasyatam Atma Tattvam Griheshu Grihamedinam. Outside people, they have got thousands of topics to talk. Shrotta Vyadini Rajendra Nrinam Santi Sahasrasa. Politics, this thing, some COVID is going on, this thing, that thing. Otherwise, politics about somebody else. That fellow, he did like this. And the whole life goes in that. Shrotta Vyadini Rajendra Nrinam Santi Sahasrasa Apasyatam Atma Tattvam. Because they are not able to see, not able to understand the importance of self-realization. Griheshu Grihamedinam, they are attached to this householder life. They are, they miss out the whole purpose. But there is another class of people who are interested in hearing about Krishna, about inquiring. They are the real ones. Like, here it is mentioned about Parikshit, who's asking. Munayo sadho prishtoham bhavadbhir loka mangalaha yat kritah Krishna samprashno yenatma suprasidati. Munayoho sadhu. This is wonderful, because all the questions that you are asking, oh sages, these are all related to Krishna. Munayoho sadhu prashnoham bhavadbhir loka mangalaha yat kritah Krishna samprashno. This is related to Krishna. This will satisfy the entire world, and it will give them the real well-being, the auspiciousness that they are looking for. We will stop here and see how Krishna took birth. Wonderful description of Bhagavatam. Even before I close, just one caveat I wanted to share. Even when Sukadev Goswami begins to speak, answer these questions of Parikshit, he says, Krishna is so wonderful and so unlimited, so infinite. His activities, his glories, his tattva is so infinite, I can't tell you. I can only tell Amsena. One small portion I can explain. So like that, if Sukadev Goswami says that he will explain in some small portion, who are we? But that doesn't mean that we should not even try. That means that we should read so scrutinizingly, so much attentively. When you try to summarize one Krishna book or one 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the essence, the Ashraya Tattva, in 1 hour, it is difficult. But even if we read from some portions and understand how this is unfolding, that itself is purifying to us. That itself is a glory. So I wish that all this attempt that we are making are not just meant for, just simply, okay, Krishna Katha kar dete hain abhi, 3-4 mahina, 3 bacha hai, abhi laga do, 3 laga do. It's not meant for any of those things. It is meant really to awaken our consciousness, to come to that proper state, to welcome the Lord, to understand the position of the Lord in our life, to take this process so seriously, tivrena bhakti yogena, anxiously engaging in devotional service. Not ठीक है यार बोला है अभी मेरे को, कितना बार बोलेंगे ये लोग, कुछ तो जाके कर देते हैं, इसको उठा के उधर डाल दो. No. Anxiously engaging in devotional for my own good. Otherwise, the other option is spiritual suicide. You just forget about all these things and you commit spiritual suicide. Such is the power of Harikatha. In that purport, actually I didn't mention one of the things which mentioned in the 10.1.4, the big purport. Prabhupada is saying when somebody doesn't know the medicine, some medicine which has been prescribed by the doctor for your disease, the disease is incurable. You are thinking this is going to finish me. I don't have any hope. You go and meet a doctor and the doctor gives you a medicine which you don't understand. What is the meaning of this medicine? But you eat it, it acts. Similarly, if you are suffering from this bhavaroga, bhavaroga means where we are constantly subjected to this birth, death, old age and disease, and you don't know what is the medicine for this. The medicine is here, Harikatha. You hear Harikatha, you know, you don't know, you believe, you don't believe, it acts. The disease gets cured. Bhavaroga gets cured. This is the power, potency of Harikatha. And this is what Krishna came to demonstrate, these wonderful pastimes, so that people who are conditioned, like all of us, get a chance to describe and glorify the Lord. This is what Bhagavatam, at the beginning, even Narada Muni is telling Vyasadeva, the reason of your despondency is because you have not directly glorified the activities of the Lord. And this is what Bhagavatam 10th canto presents, which we can all hear, discuss and benefit. I'll stop here and see if you have any questions or comments.
To elaborate on the pastimes of Krishna.
Keep it close to your...
He tells, please tell me elaborately about his glorious activities and character from the beginning to the end of his life. So, my understanding is Parikshit Maharaj is a pure devotee, right? So then, shouldn't he know that Krishna was here in his original form and he didn't die in the end of his life? And
He didn't die and
he didn't die. Like he tells, please tell me elaborately about his glorious activities and character from the beginning to his end of his life.
Hmm.
But he didn't have a beginning or end to his life because he came down as Vishnu and then turned into the human.
Yeah,
form.
Parikshit Maharaj was well aware of it because he was born in the family of devotees. He himself was protected from his birth. But he is asking this because this is the right thing to do at the time of death.
Hmm.
He had only few days left in his life. And for conditioned souls like us who will come, so that we can benefit from those doubts that Parikshit had. On our behalf, he is asking these questions. So that Sukadev Goswami can speak, can reveal. And even if he knows, even if anybody knows, repeated hearing is a must for understanding and act, because it constantly gives you that relish in the heart. Janmashtami comes every year, and we talk from same 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, but it is always fresh. Nava Nityavat Nava Yovanam. I mean, there is always a freshness which comes out of Krishna's pastimes and activities. Does that help? Give the mic.
So, Prabhu, I was just contemplating on our yesterday's class. So, Prabhu, we discussed that Krishna is all full and he doesn't need anything material at least. And
Om Purnamada.
yeah. And in our yesterday session, we saw that even the big sacrifices that were
Is of no use.
Yeah, exactly. So, what is, I mean, since we know that he is already full, and so what is that thing that and we are trying to offer something, right? So, what is that thing that which we should keep in mind to please him at least?
It is mentioned in that same purport. There are three things which were mentioned with devotion, with love, and attachment. Or that verse which Prabhupada quotes in the purport, Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam Yome Bhaktya Prayachati. Tadaham Bhakti Upahritya Asnami Prayatatmanaha. So the word bhakti is used twice. It's not what we are giving that is important. It's how we are giving. How is the mood? If it is done with what the Lord is saying, Lord is called Bhavagrahi Janardana. He's not looking at our things, our activities, I'm doing so many things. With what mood we are doing. He's seeing the bhava inside. What is the feeling that you are having? Those feelings that we are having for the Lord is what purchases him. What is the difference between the residents of Vrindavan and ordinary people like us who are conditioned? We are forced under the instructions of a pure devotee to engage in devotional service, sadhana bhakti. We are naturally not attracted. But the residents of Vrindavan, they are naturally drawn. Anything that they do, the first criteria for that is it going to please Krishna or not? Like the example of giving the dust from in the feet, like the gopis did for removing the headache of Krishna. They didn't worry about whether they'll go to hell or not. They were not worried about that. Other people were worried. But their first concern was whether this is going to help Krishna, this is going to please Krishna. For that, anything is, I don't care about anything. That feeling, that mood makes all the difference. Unfortunately, we are, in this bodily concept of life, we don't understand Krishna's birth and activities as divyam. Like yesterday, somebody was asking, what is this transcendental thing? How do I understand? We can never understand this. Because we are conditioned to see that a person takes birth and dies. So when somebody says Krishna's birth is transcendental, or Krishna's birth or activities are transcendental, it doesn't strike our conditioned brain. What do you mean by transcendental? Just another word which says that it is not like any one of us. But we can't understand. It's like, imagine I was just thinking about it yesterday after the class. There is a worm who's there in a neem tree. Okay, the worm is there in a neem tree, and you have to tell him about Rasagulla. Like yesterday we were talking about Rasagulla. Right, so you have to explain to a worm in the neem tree. So you ask him, do you know about sugar? No. Do you know about jaggery? No. Jaggery, waggery, sugar, I don't know about it. So I wanted to tell him that, Rasgulla is many more times sweeter or relishable than sugar and jaggery. But he says, I'm a worm in the neem tree. The only thing that I've eaten is bitter thing. How will I experience what sugar or jaggery is? Similarly, we are here in this material world, accepting these bodies, life after life, conditioned. How will we understand what is transcendental? We can't understand. We have to hear from the acharyas. That's why it is called Shrutekshita. To see the Lord, we have to see through the eyes of hearing. Shrutekshita. Then only we can see the Lord. We can understand the Lord.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Ah.
Prabhu, you have explained that the reciprocation of loving affairs in ecstasy are possible only in Vrindavan. So, since we are the living entities and we are the conditioned souls, so sometimes the situations came into our house that we are actually fighting together, we are abusing each other, like something which is actually not expected. So, in all those situations, how do we stick on the Krishna? Like sometimes we are thinking that why this came to me, why it actually happened to me, why it is coming to me. So
yeah. So if you see the sequence that Rupa Goswami has given, Adau Shraddha Atha Sadhu Sanga Tata Bhajana Kriya Atha Anartha Nivritti Syat. Then comes Asakti, Ruchi, Nishtha and all those things, right? So till the Anartha Nivritti has not happened fully, to remain fixed in the path of devotion is always a challenge. Once only you cross the stage of Anartha Nivritti, it's a process. You cannot say, overnight I should come to a stage where there is no confusion in my mind, there is no fighting, there is no lust, there is no anger. It's not going to happen overnight. But if you follow the process properly, what is the process? Adau Shraddha, you have little faith, you come. Then Sadhu Sangha, associate with devotees. Devotees actually as yesterday there was a line which was there in the purport, by factual experience one can see this. This is not a theoretical. I was telling, if he comes and gives a purport of gulab jamun, the nice fragrance is there. This much of temperature is there. Must be good. But he's not putting in his mouth. That's not. So devotional life is something which one has to experience factually. One has to come to this conclusion. So that is why sadhu sangha is required. Taking advice from Vaishnavas who have been practicing for a longer time is required, because theoretically we can't understand. So Adau Shraddha Atha Sadhu Sangha Tatha Bhajana Kriya. Then you become more serious, then you accept the spiritual master, become determined to follow his instructions. Then Adau Shraddha Tatha Sadhu Sangha Tatha Bhajana Kriya Tatha Anartha Nivritti. Then there is a process of Anartha Nivritti which has to happen. It's a painful process. I was telling the Balaram, using his plow in our heart. All these things which we have been holding dear to our heart inside us, that is there, has to go out. That is a difficult process. It's a painful thing. But we have to go through that process. But that takes time, and it depends on us how sincere we are, how serious we are in following the first three things. If you are very determined in following the 4 regulative principles, chanting 16 rounds every day, associating with devotees, then the process of this purification becomes quicker. Quickly we can go past that stage. And then comes the stage of Nishtha. But if we are not serious, if we are not following it properly, it takes longer time. Not that the process doesn't work. Process works, but it takes time. That's all it is. Srini? All good. Okay. No other questions. We'll stop here. And wishing all of you a happy Krishna Janmashtami, which is coming up. And we'll see further. Srimad Bhagavatam ki